So much, January, for having us.
Yeah, it's been wonderful, and thank you guys for having us speak this evening. We're just gonna be talking about franchising and this beautiful game that we've been a part of in this beautiful world.
So a little bit about what we're gonna do today. We're gonna, we'll introduce ourselves, and then we're gonna go through what franchising is, what we do, and we're going to, at the end of the session, have a little case study where we talk about what that looks like, what a mom and pop does, what a franchise does, and we're gonna kind of compare and contrast the two, so we can present both, case studies.
January.
Oh, well, we'll start off with an introduction. So my name is Ambika, and I have been in the franchise space since 2010. It's almost more than 14 years. And the brands that I oversaw, other than probably restaurants, which we'll talk about, my biggest portfolio was massage envies and European wax centers. So here's me, and a little bit about myself and the brands. I operated 32 locations across 4 states, most of which we exited about 2 to 3 years ago. I was COO, CEO, marketing, construction. We'll kind of get through all of that, but I wore many hats in the company for this. Education, my background is I went to Austin College and got my bachelor's there, and then got my MBA from McCombs over in Austin. I'm also involved with various investments. So our company invests in startups, in IT funds, in other small businesses, and we also oversee other brands that my brother will talk about.
Hi guys, I'm Shivam. So I did my bachelor's in economics and also my BBA in finance at SMU. But I will always say that my real education was always in the business world. I think that was the hard knocks education. And I started off working for a long time doing more back office work. And then I actually did my first restaurant about 8 years ago. I actually was trying to save one of our portfolios and convert it with small capex. And we'll talk about that later in the case study. But I worked on that side, and then I kind of was put into different portfolios, taking on, as my sister said, multiple hats. You know, in the small, medium business world, you are trying to do everything, take care of different tasks as well. So I was looking over the massage envies as well, looked over Subways, and then we also have Wingstops. And I had moved to Atlanta actually when we purchased that portfolio to essentially smooth out the transition, help out with operations, and then also look over the back office as well. And along with my sister, we are investors in just different concepts throughout the market. As she said, from IT funds, real estate, and small businesses as well.
Shows that we operate various businesses, franchises, and we also invest in others. The name of our group. And then for the next slide, it should show the various brands that we're in. So kind of what January mentioned, we see franchises everywhere, right? So McDonald's, Pizza Hut, we see there's actually educational Montessori's. There's a lot of different brands that we may not even know are franchise brands. And so this kind of gives you a little overview for the brands that we have invested in the past 15 plus years. We started with restaurants, so in the top right corner, Subways and Wingstops. Those are our biggest portfolios, and also the other brands were there. Health and wellness, so that's the side that I operated, European Wax Center. And we're also invested in hotels, so we have that as well. Oh, okay. You know, or do we get, maybe we'll just get closer to this. Some I can do here.
And just try to go to the next slide.
Oh.
They're asking to talk a little louder. You're
Oh,
right.
okay.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, just kind of looking over our brands. We started in the restaurant space, went to the health and wellness space, and we've gone all the way from acquiring a mature portfolio like Subway, where it's a very established brand, people really know about it, all the way to even my sister doing European Wax Centers when it was in its infancy stage. Nobody had any idea about it. I'll share a little story. One of my favorite stories about her was when she was developing the European Wax Centers. You know, they're getting opening, they're building the store, and she was out there late doing the wax beds and making those ones. And you know, you're there till midnight. So she was like, you know what, I'm just gonna sleep here because I have to be back here at 6 a.m. anyways. So that was a fun story where it's like, you're developing it from the ground up, you're there, you're helping out with construction. Funny enough, out of all the mature brands, we still love also getting into new brands too. So I'm actually the area representative for this new concept called Home Fitness, which is a fitness studio. And so after getting into spas, body waxing as more of the discretionary side away from food, we're also getting into fitness now. Revolutionary concept. It's a 25-minute workout that gives you 3 times the results using electromuscular stimulation technology. Fascinating concept, which I can talk about later as well, but I think we're kind of going to stick to the food side. And one analogy I will say on franchising overall, as we get into what franchising is, I always say that franchises are like a marriage. The reason I say that is because you really have to be careful who you're partnering with. It's not easy to get into and it's not easy to get out of. And so when you make that decision, you're in a very long-term relationship with somebody. And so we've seen it where we've had good relationships, we've had tough relationships. And so even when I was entering into this new brand, after having a tougher relationship with one of our franchisors, one of my friends asked me, they were like, why are you getting back into it? I thought you didn't like franchising. And I said, hey, even if you go through a nasty divorce, you still get married again. So it all just depends on the partner.
So onto what franchising is, right? So we kind of named brands and what we're doing. So the whole idea is you are purchasing a license or you're purchasing the rights to open a business. So instead of opening up Shivam's Wingstop or Shivam's Chicken Wings, we went and purchased a license. And this slide shows why franchise, like why do this? Because one of the biggest things you'll see is on the con side, when you have to go and open a franchise, you pay a fee, you pay royalties, which is from everything that you make, actually your revenue, not even your profit, you have a percentage that you give to the company. So what do you get from it? So I put the slide there so you can kind of see what is in it for us. And we'll go through a real life example as well to kind of show numbers and what this looks like and why you would get into franchising. So one of the biggest statistics that I love is franchises have a success rate of 90% versus other restaurants or other mom and pops. And what do you get? Well, you get brand recognition, right? So if you see a Subway symbol or McDonald's symbol, you see the golden arches, you would have a business that people have already vetted, people know, people recognize, which is a very big deal, right? Because a lot of times when you're trying new concepts, you're teaching people about the brand and you're teaching people what your ingredients are and what your products are at the same time. So that's a lot ahead of time. So you've already paid for the brand. Something else is just recognition with landlords and with lenders. So for a lot of these, people might be taking a small business loan or they may be working with other financiers, and they always like it when there is something, that they can stand by. For example, there might be sample financials from another owner of a Subway, and we can show them ours and say, hey, this is a real brand, like it can last, we're true and tested. And even Subway as a brand has been around for over almost 60 years. So a lot of that kind of reputation helps with lenders, with landlords, with vendors, with whoever you're working with, because they want to know that you know what you're doing. And on the education piece, and this is my favorite part, is you get a manual on what to do. So literally we have manuals on how to cut onions, how thick the onion should be, how much should the olives weigh? And like, fun fact, olives are very expensive. So it's like a very big part of our training where we have employees weigh what they're putting on sandwiches because of the cost. Even things like coming up with recipes. They're tested at their corporate location. So I'm not sitting there making food and like spending a lot of money on it and waiting and seeing what people like. So those are a lot of cool things that can happen. Another thing is collaboration. So we'll have prizes later. I think January has them, but we do collaborations with different brands. For example, like Auntie Anne's, like pretzels and things like that. And that's only something that big brands can do together. As a single owner, I could never do. So you have a lot of those opportunities, I think, for the franchise. And then along with resource, things like real estate. So even if I'm trying to find a space, I have somebody that tells me how big it should, what should it look like? How do you do construction? So for me, the only businesses I've ever really done have been franchises. My brother has done both sides, a mom and pop and a franchise. But I liked it because even going to business school, nobody sits and teaches you how to open a store, how to get your certificate of occupancy, how to make your ingredient list. This is all already set in an operations manual. So having that guide and having a resource is worth money. And like I said, it comes at a cost, right? So there's always examples of, there's franchisors that are very flexible. There's franchisors that are not. So for example, if I wanted to come up with my own Subway pizza with my own ingredients, I'm not supposed to do that. Legally, I would be in trouble. So there's flexibility that you cannot have if you're beholden to a brand, which is also a good thing because you want to be able to go to any store and have the same experience and food. But that's a con. So if you're sometimes when you're a creative person and you want to have that autonomy, franchising is a bit hard because there are stringent rules on what you can and cannot.
Yeah, and going back on the analogy of the marriage side, when you sign that franchise agreement, it's one of the roughest prenups you'll ever sign. One person has all the power. But I will say the good thing is you're signing on with a big partner. So kind of what my sister was saying, when you really look at it, you get that economies of scale. In Subway, we have factories that are just producing our bread. We have factories that are just producing our lettuce. Whereas if you're, a small startup or a mom and pop, you're not going to. I remember when Wingstop wasn't as large as it is today, and we've been in the brand for 15 years. And so at one point, we really didn't have as much control over the chicken wing supply. But now that we represent just over 10% of that, we have a lot more sway. And that's kind of what really happens as the franchise grows. And then just one more point I'll make is I call it the stupid tax. Sometimes in life, we have to pay the stupid tax just because we don't know what we're doing. That's one great thing about the franchise family. Is what I like to call it. I have created deep relationships with friends of mine from New York to LA to Seattle, or you name it, all across the country who are in the same situation. We meet at conferences, we discuss things, we almost commiserate when we're doing poorly, we get excited when we're doing well. And so that franchise family has been able to save mistakes that I may make in the future. And that's really what's great about the franchises. Not only can you leverage the people, but you can also use the resources at the franchisor itself, where they're going to give you the entire playbook. But yeah, that creativity, it can be a challenge, not having it, but then having the standardized processes really help too.
So what we wanted to do is, of course, we talked about what franchising is we wanted to give a real life example to show what that looks like. So I know there are some entrepreneurs, there's kind of thinking about going into entrepreneurship, both sides. And when you look at it, one of the biggest things you want to see is, well, what does that look like? What does my investment look like? So we have Subway on the left, which of course everyone knows what that is. And on the right, which my brother will explain, is we constructed, ran a mom and pop seafood restaurant. So he has had experience on both sides. So let him go ahead and share what that looked like.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, like my sister said, Subway is everywhere. Nobody needs an introduction to the Subway. For Reese Street, funny story about it. About 8 years ago, we had a smash burger portfolio and it just did not do well. So my task was, how can I, with a minimal amount of money, change it into a different concept? So we were going with a franchise this time. We were going solo. I looked at the market and I saw you have Long John Silver's on one end as fast food, seafood, and then you had Red Lobster on the other end for dine-in seafood. So then I went in the middle in the fast casual space, kind of where Chipotle, Wingstop, and Cava are right now, and went into fast casual seafood. So a little bit higher quality product, a little bit higher price, but really good concept overall. So, it was interesting because it was about 2 to 3 months as when I had to get everything up, kind of made the signage, made the branding, did the food negotiations, the contract negotiations, start getting the team together on the operations side. When I compare it to a franchise, they had everything already set on the franchise side. Whereas for me over here, I'm creating the menus, I'm creating the standard operating procedure. I'm trying to figure out what customers want, what they may not want. I don't even know what my demographics are going to be. I just kind of had an idea and I started running with it. Now, it was a very exciting one. It had a lot of high risk and it was very rewarding from a learning experience. But I mean, I saw the fluctuations like crazy. I remember opening, and usually when we open a new restaurant, with the franchise side, you have trainers and trained individuals that will come and help you open. Because unlike the services side, when you open a restaurant, everyone's excited to try it. You're in a local town, you're in a local population. People are going to be like, hey, that's the new thing and I can't wait to check it out. For me, I opened this and I remember I was almost on the floor going, what is going on? It was a small town. We were in Wichita Falls, Texas. Everyone was so excited for us to open. They were waiting for us to open. And we had almost an hour waits for food, which we should have had. We should have had only 15 minutes, but because we were so backlogged. Because we did the training in-house, we didn't really know what we were doing. We're trying to figure out the kinks. Whereas when you open a new restaurant, you have an entire team. The franchisor sends people to you. They help train your people. They're like, hey, this is how you do it. This is how you do it quicker. Here, we didn't really know what we were doing, and we're kind of getting off the ground. And the funny thing is, because I came from the franchise background, everyone thought this was a franchise house because I designed it that. So I had that knowledge, but then coming in and doing the operations and having that understanding, that's where it got really tough. Whereas for Subway, we had throughput systems. We knew you're going to put this is the formula, you're going to pass it right over here. This is how many people need to be on the station. Your movements are going to be in this way. I mean, everything is so formulaic because it's been tested for many, many years, and you have all this experience behind it. Whereas for this one, I was just kind of flying by the gun, trying to figure it out with ideas that I had.
Yeah, fill up their recipes, right?
Own recipes and everything, and we didn't even know if it was going to be good. Whereas I think for them, it's like they have the chefs, they have the entire research, and that's really what you're paying for with a franchise. You're paying for, I want all the things that are already set for me. Now, referencing to what Ambika said earlier too, if you are a very creative person, that it can really get challenging because you want to try or test different things out. But if you're somebody who's like, you know what, I want to go into a brand, I want to own my own business, I want to know a lot of things, have everything set for me, it's a great model. And it's a great way to make money. It's something that's known, and then even better than that, there's a lot of people that you can not only buy it from, but also sell to as well. Because one of the other tough things is when you buy a business, it's sometimes a little bit easier. When you sell, it's also pretty tough. And we've been on both sides of that. But it's nice to also have a community where I have a friend in New York and I go, hey, what do you think? Would you like to buy it? Or somebody in the friends, even in the local area, would you like to buy my store if I want to get out as well? So there is a little bit more of a captive environment there. But yeah, starting it, owning it, running it, I can say the franchise was a lot easier, but I will say I did learn a lot more from doing the Reese side as well.
And you can see on the both sides, I put kind of like the startup cost, what that looks like. So it comes with a fee when you're part of a franchise, and so it's kind of hefty at the start, but then, you kind of compare how on business, is that worth it? That as well. And not to say that we've done both sides, there are some very successful mom and pops. But this is just to say, this is why people invest in a brand versus maybe create their own. So we wanted to talk about like whether or not to other franchise level, about that side.
Yeah, kind of the investments.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at the franchisor, being on the other side and being the franchisor itself, that's an interesting side too. Now we've done the case study as being a franchisee. Having the brand and developing your own concept has been amazing as well. We've worked with franchisors and we've invested in franchise companies, whether it's kind of smaller unit counts or larger unit counts. Once you get a level of brand recognition and you're at that franchisor level, that's another game itself. You go from really running operations and running stores, which is still going to be a part of it, but then to developing an entire brand. And the ways that you can actually generate revenue, the different revenue channels that are there as well, and just how to scale it becomes its own process too. There's regional plays, there's area representative plays, and there's also direct development plays as well. But I will say, as kind of being in the franchising side, as a franchisee and signing on for a new brand as well recently, it's so nice to have the technology, the systems, and everything already set for you going into something. So I can focus on really running the operations, developing a team, and then growing the locations as well. On that side, we'll go to Q&A now.
And also because we kind of spoke generally, but I just also wanted to see kind of what specific questions or even general questions that we could ask about franchising. So we kind of talked about it as business owners, but there's a lot more we could discuss. So feel free to put it in the chat box.
Yeah, especially if there's any questions specifically on operations, marketing, finance, kind of the entire gambit of it. Anything that's specific that we can help out with or shed light on, please let us know.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So,
Your question.
yeah, so the question was, can you franchise in just the food industry or other industries? And it's all industries. So, although we're like mainly in food, there's franchises for like Montessori schools, daycares. I was even telling my brother, like one of the most successful franchises is like HVAC AC systems. So it's somebody that was a founder that found like I guess a great system to set up and then sold those licenses as well. And the reason people set up a franchise is it's a way to grow your business. So it's easier for me to share the piece of pie and have somebody go to another state and develop my brand than for me to do it everywhere at the same time. So yes, but there's so many out there that I hadn't even heard of. A great resource is there's franchise conferences, and there's even like online resources like the Franchise Times. And so they list all of the brands, they list the most popular brands, and like the ones that everyone's the most excited about. So it's kind of a good way to see, but there's thousands of different ones. Right now, most of our portfolio is food. We have some in like health and wellness, so some spas, and then he's going to be doing the gym concept. But right now, mostly food. But we're trying to do other industries as well because you want to, be part of.
Yeah, we started with food and we were so concentrated in food, and food is an amazing space to be in because people understand it really well. Being in the services side and for Ambika, she had developed massage MVs from 5 units to 32. And I think the challenge was that with the services game, it's a little bit trickier. You can't really go everywhere, and you have to be a lot more concentrated on who you're targeting and what your teams are going to be, because it's a lot more, I would say, the people side is a little bit different. And with each business, it has its own flavor to it. But the food side, it's definitely grittier. More people understand it very well, and people will have an easier time coming into your location. So we would say that from the spa side, somebody leaving their current provider was always a little bit trickier because we had to almost convince them to come. Whereas on the food side, if I was like, hey, I opened a new concept down the road, people are going to keep trying it. And so switching costs is so much lower for food. And so you'll have a lot of trials, but then you have to win every time. Whereas I think on the services side, you really have to win initially. And then once the person develops a connection with you, you kind of have a consumer for life. It's more, I would say it's interesting because in the service side, because it's such more of an intimate relationship, especially when you're the massage side and the spa side, where you're doing facials for somebody or you're doing a massage therapy. Once they develop that connection, you almost develop a friendship with your customer and your team. You really have somebody for a much longer time as a client. So I would say it takes a little bit longer to get them, but once you get them, it's stickier, which is nice.
All right, did you repeat her question so they can hear it at home? Okay, perfect. So there's someone in the chat and they said, I'm gonna read what they said, so I can tell you problem. They said, how can I start franchising my food business? Can you help me understand the path?
Yeah, so great question, but talking about, yeah. So with an existing food concept, how to take that and scale it. So really the main reason to do that is because restaurants are really capital intensive, and really to scale that concept, especially when you have a proven brand, you're going to find the partners to do so. I would say there's a lot of steps to start with, and once the model is proven itself, and you basically develop the formulas, you start developing a standard operating procedure, you start to develop kind of your marketing and your branding. And then from there, there's also the legal side. So you're gonna have to create franchise document disclosures, FDDs. You're gonna have to create franchise agreements, and that's kind of where a legal partner comes in to play, where you're partnering with a law firm to start going into various states to work on the franchising documents themselves. But the franchise itself, what's interesting is you're selling a brand and you're selling a system, because people want to get into something and they say, hey, I don't want to kind of recreate the wheel. I want to join the wheel, but I'm going to make the wheel over here and I'm going to grow this business further. And so what you're selling is you're selling a brand, you're selling a system. So all these contracts that you have in place for your existing location, that's kind of what you're developing on this side. And I would say it's kind of this professionalization of it. On the way, there's going to be these different nuances. You're going to kind of learn and scale appropriately, developing a team, a management team, a development team, just all in the various aspects, but that'll change as you scale. So I would say the 1 to 10 unit franchisor is different from the 100 unit franchisor and the 1,000 unit franchisor. And at each point, you are probably going to need a good legal partner, good mentors to basically guide you through those pathways. To start out itself, really the system and branding, I think, are going to be the two most critical aspects. Because once you have that, then you can start partnering with people and you say, hey, I have a proven concept. I know exactly what I'm selling. I know the demographics that I have. This is the existing location. This is my profitability. Now, as you move forward, somebody signs on and they try to replicate it somewhere else. And really, when you think about also franchising a new concept, so the concept that we signed on with, they only have 12 locations in the nation. And when I signed on, they really only had 1 or 2. But the main reason I did so was because they had such a unique technology. When I talked to the early Wingstop franchisees, specifically on the food side, they tried the product and they liked it so much that they said, this is amazing. This product needs to go everywhere. I want to scale it further. And so really in the food industry, and I always say this, that what are you actually selling? In the food industry, we don't really sell food, we sell addiction. We have a really, really good product. We have a product, when I look at Wingstop, we have a product where people are like, I need to come back for this because it makes me so happy when I eat. And that's really what gets people coming and going, that ranch is insane, I need it right now. When we were in the massage business, I was also used to say, we don't really sell massage, we sell pain. People are in pain, they're coming, they're getting the tension out. And then when we were doing skincare on the spa side, we were selling confidence. We weren't really just selling skincare. And so with food, when you have that product that is so craveable, you really have the meat of it. You have that product. Then from there, when you get into franchising, after you have that product that's established, systems and brand.
And I would say, especially with food, you want it to be where it's simplified and you have a process. So you can take the example of what is it? The cookie, like Crave, for example, right? Like they were Crumble, like they were very successful because they grew very rapidly because they had 4 or 5 amazing products, and then they had a process that was like 5 or 6 ingredients. So one of the biggest things when I see food concepts that are kind of wanting to go to that, or any concept wanting to franchise, is that find like what is that, those 2 or 3 things that make you unique, and then make it as simple as possible where like a 10-year-old can open it and be like, okay, I can take this and I can make this product. Because then that's attractive to somebody that's like, hey, I want to open up, a restaurant or a bakery, so that I can replicate that same feel. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just making it as simple as possible. So you can also share that information and somebody can just literally take it and create a duplicate of what you have. And you want that because you want to grow where people are keeping the integrity of your product and of your ingredients as well. So even small things like, where do you source your ingredients, like measurements, everything, because those are things that later on you're going to need and develop, and it's easier to do it while you're in the business and working on that side.
Yeah, completely standardized, and to that point, complexity always kills execution. So keeping it so simple is really important.
Next question. How do you know that your business is ready to franchise? Talk to us about some indicators. I know you mentioned you have to have your procedures down to cutting the onions at the right thickness. But how do I know that franchising may be the next best step for me?
So the question is, how do you know if franchising is the next best step, and how do you know if you're ready? So the biggest reason somebody will franchise is they want to grow, right? So that you want to grow, and you may not want to invest the capital in growing yourself, and you want to grow even quicker. So Subway, for example, like largest franchise, and I forgot how many franchises, it's 20,000 locations. And they did that because the founder began franchising immediately. So the desire is growth. And some people can grow by themselves, but it's not usually as rapid. So it kind of depends on your desire on how you want to go about it. If you're somebody that's like, hey, I want to develop 3 or 4 locations in Dallas, then you may not need a partner to come in. But if you're looking at a concept that you're like, I want to be in all the states within the next decade, then franchising is a way to grow, because then you can find partners in each state, maybe other people that are already franchisees, and then they can grow and develop your concept. So that's kind of more so what your strategy is. How do you want to grow? Why do you want to grow? And then to know if you're ready, I would say, is it a proven concept? Is it something that, it wouldn't just be popular in Texas? You could go to Colorado, or you could go to New York, and you think it would be successful. So those are a lot of signs of can I see this being a legacy brand? Can I see it lasting? And then of course, like in terms of financials, is this something that I can replicate? Are my costs so high that I won't be able to do it anywhere else, right?
Yeah, and so for me, it's interesting. I'm the area representative for Texas right now, and for the fitness concept that we have. And when I talk to people about it, I feel the weight of the responsibility that I'm asking somebody to sign on to develop this concept for this business. And so from a franchising perspective, I feel like the best way to see if you're ready is if you were to say, I have one of my best friends over here, and I would want them to completely invest in this business because I know it's going to do well. And really, the reason I say that is because that's the level of confidence you need in your product, in your systems, and in your brand to say, I would want my best friends to be involved in this. I talked to one of the early Wingstop franchisees. I think they were got like store number 4 or 5. And when I was talking to them about it, an amazing Texan individual, because it's a Dallas-based company. And he just talked about how he was like, I love this brand so much. It was so great that I had to get my family involved. So he got his brother-in-law involved. He got his sister involved. He had friends who he got into the brand. And that was a true testament to say, it is so good. The brand is so amazing that I really want these people to get in. So that's a way to kind of feel it out. You can develop everything on this side. And for me, I think there's a 2 sides. So there's a logical side where I've developed all the systems, I've developed all the brand. I know I have a good product. And then there's that emotional side where you go, it's so good. I want to get everyone into this. And really, when you have a proven store, it's a lot easier to kind of make that decision because you know that you're doing well.
Okay. All right, so this is the question that I think everybody wants to know. How much money do I need? And I figure it varies by industry. So can you be as specific as possible about what it takes to franchise or to buy into?
And so it's, will you choose maybe restaurants as an example first? Because it's so different depending on what you're
Right.
looking at. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I think when we look at restaurants, and there's 2 really interesting components to it. We can look at how much it would cost to purchase one and how much it would cost to develop one. Now, purchasing can be anywhere. You may purchase it, usually people purchase it on a cash flow multiple. And so that's going to be a different conversation, but let's go with a example where a Subway location or a Wingstop location, one of the restaurants is making about $100,000 a year. Generally, people are going to purchase it, depending on the brand, anywhere from $300,000 is a purchase price at the very, very low end to close to $600,000 to $700,000, depending on what the brand is, what tier it's in. And so there's going to be a lot of variability. How much cash you need versus how much debt you need, the equity side. I would say generally SBA, I would say takes about 20% down. And so in the example that the business may be $500,000, you're going to be putting about $100,000 down into that business of a cash, and then $400,000 is going to be your debt. And so that's kind of an entry point into maybe an existing business that's making money. Developing it, it kind of varies across the board. I remember Subway's. We were able to develop Subways back in the day for, I would say, $250,000 to $300,000 a store.
Yeah, and that includes, so basically that's like your pay a fee, which is a license fee to say, I want to open a store. And then that's the construction and the initial cost for all the supplies. So that's like 200 to 250,000 all in. But that's also like one example, right? So you can imagine a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A, because they're just so much larger. I mean, I would assume the startup cost would be like 750,000 plus because of the size. So it depends on the brand that you're looking at. And it varies, and even the amount of fees that they take varies. So one may take 6%, one may take up to 12 or 13%. So it's a range. But just to give an example like that you gave, right? An existing business and purchasing an existing business may be more expensive than you're able to buy something that is running, and then developing maybe a bit more economical, depending on what you're looking at. So,
and I would say there's definitely a generally that's the good practices. The outliers are if you were able to pick up a 2nd generation store where they may have all the equipment already there, and then you can take that over that space and develop it. We've done that as well, and it's really reduced our cost of getting into the business. And we've also acquired turnaround locations. So, locations where the person, they may have not known what they were doing and they kind of threw the keys at the wall. It may have been a bad situation. We've gone into stores where we've had to really clean everything up and, get the grime off and really basically almost start the business over. but because there was too many liabilities attached to it, we basically just assumed those. I would say they're not bankruptcy, but they're near bankruptcy takeovers. So there are ways to really reduce the amount that you have to get into it, but those are kind of diamonds in the rough, and we don't find that often. Really, what we're doing is we're kind of developing in the range that we talked about.
So what are some red flags? Just mentioned that there are diamonds in the rough, or there just might be something that's bankrupt. I want to get into it. It sounds too good to be true. Tell me 5, I don't know how many there are, some top red flags when you go and somebody's talking about franchising that you should be aware of.
Yeah, so the question was, what are some red flags? And going back to my analogy on marriage, there's a reason we have a dating process. And it's due diligence really, but just kind of going off that analogy, really I would say we have to listen to what they're saying and what they're doing. When I say it's a marriage, you have one partner that has a lot of power, that has an existing brand. And so when you're in that phase of really getting to know the brand, know the systems, know the operations, the product, you're truly trying to see, one, who are they partnering? Who are kind of the existing ones? And the existing franchisees will tell you more about the business than anybody else because they know it, they live it. So for us now, one big thing that we do is we evaluate management teams. We see how they're doing, the leadership of the franchisor. Is this somebody I want to partner with? Is this somebody who's receptive to feedback? Do they listen? Are they making the right decisions? Are they making the right calls? Or are they making decisions that aren't really in the best interest of the brand, but in the best interest of themselves? And so that's one of the challenges that you may get with a franchise that is a bit more mature, that may have put one of the wrong people in place. Is, you know, for them, it may be a job. For us, it's our livelihood. It's a business that we're completely tied into. And we've been on both sides. We've been in places where it's just a job to somebody. And then we've been in franchisors where founders still there. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into it. We have a connection with them. It's amazing to see how they're doing. And then even on the management side, we've seen amazing CEOs, amazing partners that have taken a brand from where it was, maybe at a kind of lower stage, and really turned it around and brought it to new heights. But that's something that we really focus on, is we don't ignore that fact. They may have a good product, they may have good systems, they may have a good brand as well, but do they have the right people that are taking care of them? That's really important when looking at a franchisor. And then the earlier things for sure. Do they know what they're doing from a system side? Do they have a good brand? And then the biggest thing is, do they have a good product? So product is everything. I would say Wingstop, one of the main reasons it's so good is because the product is amazing. And then when I even look at the concept that I signed on for with Home Fitness, it is such a revolutionary technology. We have a 25-minute workout that's giving you 3 times the results, where you're basically creating one of the biggest hacks to working out in the most efficient way possible. That technology is so amazing that the product almost sells itself. So really those factors, you need to really have all that. And if you're a little bit iffy on that, or you're like, I don't know, but maybe it can work, even when dating, when you start justifying the relationship, that's when it starts to get a little tricky. You want to be really confident that this is the partner that you want to spend the next 5-10 years with, that you want to grow in this brand, you want to develop the brand.
And as we said, other big red flag is the brand that you're with. Are they innovating? Are they coming up with new products or coming up with new technology? Or are they like Blockbuster that didn't believe in going digital, right? So it has to be somebody that you think is investing in those things. And even like that education piece, right? Like not all franchises have great processes. So does it have a rule book? Are you going to walk me, go hand in hand and help me as I develop a store and invest all this money in you? So there's a lot of different things to watch out for, but I do think the biggest thing is whoever's already there, if somebody's already invested in a brand, like ask them, do you like your franchise, or how's your experience? So that's the best way to get like a little test on how it is.
So I know, so you said this a little bit. We want you to be as specific as you can. I've got a consulting agency, all right? And so I don't know if they're asking for themselves or they're asking for their clients. But they said, if you're open to buying the franchise, what questions should you ask or know to help you decide which is best? So they don't have a tie to the food or whatever. They just want to know, how do I decide? I want a franchise. I want that ready-made model. What questions do I ask? How do I know which one best fits me?
Yeah, so I think, acquisition is always interesting, where you're kind of going into the brand itself. one of my favorite first questions is I ask the person why they're selling. I really want to know what they're looking at. And actually, I don't think I repeated the question. So the question,
Go ahead.
yeah, the question was, when we're looking at an acquisition, what questions do you ask, or what are the things that you're looking
When you're
for
looking at a franchise.
when you're looking for a franchise business? And after doing the overview of the franchisor, kind of what we're talking about, the red flags, and really looking into that, if I decided on a franchisor, now my next question when I'm looking to buy it from a franchisee is, why are they selling? And what's the motivation behind it? And there could be a lot of different reasons. One is, they want to exit, they're hitting retirement stage. One is, they've worked in this for 5 years and they're ready to get out. They want a new chapter. So you really want to know what the reason is and really hone down to it too. But that's one of the first questions I ask. So.
Yeah, and when you're going into it, it's more that, and it depends on the person. Like, I am somebody that I like a tried and tested model. Some people are okay getting into new brands, but I would be that person that's like, how long have you been in business? How many franchisees do you have? What's the average revenue? What's your average profit margin? So a lot of those basic questions to start with, and that way you can kind of see the track record. Now, there's some individuals that may have a higher risk tolerance, and my brother's an example where you might want to get into a brand early on, and you're asking more questions about, how is your technology? How's your advancement? What are the startup costs? So I guess a better way to phrase it is, it depends on what kind of investment it is, right? And what you're looking at. We still mainly have mature businesses, so we're kind of looking at the existing locations, how they're running. How's their management team? Like, do they have a completely new team that doesn't know what they're doing, or they've been there for a while and, if my store isn't doing well, are they going to help me, or are they going to be supportive, or are they going to send me like legal letters, right? Because we've seen good and bad franchisors. So there's a lot to see. And I had mentioned earlier, there's so many conferences and publications that just even show you the top franchises, and that's based on their revenue and their growth. And I always just go to the top 20 and just take a look at it to see what's in the market, to give myself an idea of what's out there.
All right, I got 2 more questions, and I think we'll wrap it up unless you guys want to put anything else in the chat. The first one is, I know it's dependent. However, realistically, is it true that franchises that typically start off making money, or how long does it normally take to see the black versus the red?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question is, so the $1 million question that was asked was, at what point are you going to start making money on this thing? Because really, when you think about it, we all talk about this, we're in business to make money. And money is the oxygen of the business itself. So good test of thumb for, I would say, personally for me, for development, my personal rule is I want to make whatever money I put in to develop the store back in 2.5 years. So if I spent $250,000 or developing the store, I want to make that $250,000 back in 2.5 years. And so it's kind of just like that, the rule of thumb that I have. When it comes to an acquisition, whatever multiple you're purchasing it at, generally that's kind of what you're expecting your return to be. So if you're buying it for 4 times cash flow, you're expecting or 4 times EBITDA, you're expecting to get it back in 4 years. And as long as you just keep the business steady. Now, if you create efficiencies in the business, that number can be, you can get your money back in maybe 2 years. But the other challenge is that if the business tanks, it may be a 10-year payback. And that's really when things start to get a little bit dicey. And we've been on both sides. We've acquired locations and we've gotten our money back within a year or 2 years. It's been amazing. And there's been incidents where it's taken 12 years or it's failed. And so we've tasted both sides of it, the success and the challenges and failures there.
And some of the businesses or the brands will give you that information. So for example, Massage Envy, they have the FDD, which is a document you have to sign if you're interested, and they have a sample financial sheet. And it shows that within 18 months to 2 years, if you do all this, this is how long it'll take you to break even. Not all brands do that, but some will share that information, which is very important so that you can forecast and which money you need and what kind of debt you take, or even just asking them verbally. So if I was interested in a franchise, what I would do is just call them, get their information, and they would give a ballpark of usually this is how long it takes for our franchisees to break even. Every business is different. I was mainly in health and wellness, so it could take up to 2 years, but there's some food businesses that are very successful initially and then the interest dies down. So it might be dependent on the type of brand that you're in as well.
Okay, so somebody else put an extra 2 questions in the chat. So we still have 2 questions. Okay. So here's the next question. I'm interested in a Franco. Oh, that's the third one. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. All right, so I'm interested in a franchise. I don't have franchise experience, but my current business is running well. What are some things that I can tell a bank that may lend my credibility or extend my credibility to take a leap into the franchising industry?
So to basically take an existing location or existing brand and make.
Is this a brand and franchise?
Either way, we'll take them both. But they want, in other words, they're currently in business. They're doing well. But they want to either purchase a franchise or they want to franchise their business. Let's go with both.
Yeah.
What do they tell the bank? Because they don't have necessarily the capital to do this. So what would the bank listen to?
Right, so the question, and I think we'll tackle one and then we'll tackle the other. The question was, I have an existing business and I'm looking to franchise it. What do I tell the bank? I would say for that side, the good thing is you have historical information. Definitely, if you have a good P&Ls and you have a good accountant that has it set properly, you can really go to the bank and say, I have all this data. I'm just trying to take this now and replicate it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, when the banks see a thriving business, it makes things a lot easier.
And you can tell them this is what the startup cost is. So that part is evident and clear versus a startup when you wouldn't have had anything else. So I would even give an example, like if I wanted to expand into these cities, this is what it would look like based on the data and actually present it that way.
Mm-hmm. And really, when you look at the SBA side, banks have different programs, and really, you can talk to various banks and institutions about it. Really, it comes down to, for them, a level of risk. So when they're looking at an individual, they're seeing obviously how much capital and what their net worth is going to be, but they're also looking at what their experience is, how they can kind of move forward with the individual. And so they're kind of looking at the risk itself. How much risk is it if I decide to partner with this individual? And even when we talk about our banks, we always talk about them as financing partners, because really it's working on a relationship with the bank. And for us, I mean, in some cases we're personally guaranteeing these loans. It's kind of completely on our name. And so for us, there's that level of risk, and the bank also carries that risk. So when you think about it from the lender's perspective, what they're trying to figure out is how much risk does this person carry? You have the experience, you have an existing business, makes it a lot easier because the bank is then a lot more comfortable with it. And in some situations, we just have banks lending directly to us, because then they're just doing it directly to the individual. And really, it is that relationship that you cultivate. And sometimes you need to meet almost 20 banks until you find the right one.
As you said, they may just say, like, let's wait a year, or like, let's see you develop a location. So depending on, and also some banks are just more apt to helping smaller businesses and some aren't. So it's also finding those banks, because not everybody knows about that, and not everybody knows about smaller businesses and franchising. So I think that's important as well.
Yeah. All right. So besides banks, that was a question that just popped up, and then there's still a couple more. Besides banks, what other options are there to find financing?
Yeah. So the question was, besides banks, what other ways can we basically get this business off the ground? It's interesting. It's a startup question, and there's always different avenues. There's the investor avenue, where you're giving up equity in the business that you have to bring on a partner. And in those cases, there's various people out there. People always usually start with friends and family, because they know the individual and they're lending to the credibility, or they're, investing in the individual itself. And we've done that too. We've invested in people, and they may have one store, and we've helped develop them to 6 to 10 stores, kind of guiding along the way, but also it's a mutually beneficial scenario. And those may be close relationships, they may be people that we've been introduced to. And I think that's kind of where it is when you look at the investor network, people that are known and people that know you. Because going back to marriage analogy, in a business relationship, that's also another marriage where you were so tied in together. And when you're really tied in together, you want to make sure you have the right person as well. And so even the people that you bring on as an investor, and we've had that too, we've had different investor partners. We want to make sure that it's a really harmonious relationship where we really understand each other and are on the same page. Otherwise, we've seen it where it goes really well. You've also seen the challenges of it as well. So.
All right, so I think this might be the last question. Let's see if they put anything else in. Someone has offered to franchise my business, to invest and spin off. Okay. How do I know they're not just trying to get my proprietary information? How do I protect from that? Besides like an NDA, what are my steps before I even start these conversations?
Yeah, so definitely it kind of goes into legal territory. Oh, the question is, if somebody wants to kind of replicate or franchise your business, what can you do to protect yourself? So usually the first step when you are partnering or having a franchisee is you want to create a franchise disclosure document. So, to protect yourself, you want to basically have a document where you are kind of sharing your rights, but you're also protecting your rights at the same time. So that means that somebody is using your idea for a fee or for some kind of royalty fee, but you're also holding them accountable where they can't just take your idea and run, or they can't take the store and then rename it and say it was there. So there's a lot of protections that go into that. We're not lawyers, so I'm sure there's other recommendations as well. But that would be one of the first things. And then of course you're looking at IP, and if it's a specific product, if it's technology, or you need to start with at least keeping that trademark or protection first. So that's going the lawyer route. But before sharing anything, my recommendation is to make sure that you have that done, because that's your bread and butter. That's how you'll grow.
Yeah, whatever the proprietary information is, making sure that that's as protected as possible. The other challenge is especially in the food industry. I mean, you look at it, you have a Cane's, you have a Zaxby's, I mean, you'll have Bojangles. I mean, you'll have all these individuals that kind of are replications or different ideas or identifications of each other as well. So really, it's hard to say that I am the only individual that does chicken wings. And that's why for me, the product has to be so great. For Wingstop, really, and we've actually, funny story, we saw this in Subway. Some guy came to Subway, he actually got all the agreements, and I remember this was in Subway franchisee training. They discussed it, and he decided to create his own brand. That was the exact same thing. He just replaced the sign. So, I mean, he was completely went after it, and it was just so obvious. But it's really hard to completely protect things that aren't proprietary. And again, this is where, like, we're not in the legal space, so that's something to definitely discuss. But definitely starting with an NDA, your financials, things that are protected, and really talking to the individual, who is the person across from you, and what is kind of the relationship? Because to that point, there are people that are going to potentially try to knock things off or take things around, and so you have to see what their self-interest is and kind of what they're looking for as well when you're partnering with them. But definitely starting off with an NDA as an initial start,
Just to start that protection for yourself as well.
And then what I promised to be the very last question, okay, is I'm afraid to franchise my business in my current city because it may cannibalize my profitability. Any guidance on franchising in other cities or any challenges, any thoughts?
Yeah, so the question was, I have an existing business right now. It's running well, and I want to franchise it, but I'm worried that developing another location in my city is going to cannibalize the business. And it's a really good point. It's funny because when we look at territories and items, really we're seeing what our demos are going to be. So if you have the knowledge of the space where I have a location in this area, and within a 4 or 5 mile radius, I'm capturing this amount of people, that's kind of one conversation. Now, if your business is doing really well and you have lines out the door and people are coming, half an hour away to come and try your product or stand in line for it, now you have a great problem because you can actually develop within the city. And I would actually argue that it's better to develop within the city, because then you get more to develop it within the city yourself, because you actually get more of a regional play. And so you already have a lot of brand equity within the city. You have an active fan base that's excited about, that's craving it. So you can go from, for example, you may be in downtown, do I develop in Plain? Or if I'm in downtown, do I develop maybe a little bit closer? And so there's a different development strategy that you have. Now, going into a different location as well, I mean, brands do it differently. And I'll tell you, from the services side, you have like a concept like Barry's, for example. Barry's develops one flagship location in every big city. For them, that's kind of their model, and that's one of their niches that they play off on because they want that exclusivity. With food, it's a little bit different because you get excited about going in a regional play. We developed Wingstops in Dallas, and then we also developed them in the Northeast in Philadelphia. Now, when we entered into Philly, nobody had any clue what Wingstop was. That was before we had the national marketing that we have today. Today, developing it in Philly would be a lot easier than when we did it about, I want to say, 8 years ago. And when we were in there, we were just trying to get a new brand off the ground. And so it gets a lot harder to kind of develop that marketing side because you're going back to doing the guerrilla marketing on the ground, like kind of the small little plays that you need where you're touching you have different touch points. So personally for me, I think the regional plays make a lot of sense. And you'll see that. I mean, Wingstop started in Texas and then it kind of expanded. Cane's, I think, started in Louisiana and then expanded in that way. And then you have brands that may be like localized to the area, but they do well. And that's the big key to it.
And I would say definitely on the side of what to do or what to look for when you're going to a different city is finding a partner or somebody you want to franchise to that can develop that whole city for you or has had experience doing it. But if it's something like I mean, this is just an opinion, so it sounds like I do, but if I was in the same city, I would try to develop it myself if I could. Because that's probably going to be your base anyways, and you already have that customer base, so. That would be my take on it.
And you have a lot more known information. I mean, even just talking to your customers,
Yeah.
seeing where they're coming from, what
That's
their
where they
opinions
drive
are.
it, yeah.
And really, it's amazing customer service too, because I know customers, I also like the feedback. Obviously, there's ones who are like, I want my food, I want to get out. But there's also the ones who are like, oh my God, you're the owner. It's so nice to meet you. And then you get to hear the stories as well. And you develop that connection too. So you can actually see where your product is. And then when you have target demos, you can really, with a good broker partner, you can really figure out where to develop properly. And a good broker partner will also have the technology to give you the demos as well. And that becomes pretty exciting.
Right, to clarify, so you mentioned a broker partner. Is that like using another company or a company to help you do something? Or are there companies that help you do franchises that are not broker partners? Or is it probably just better to do it independently so you don't have to pay out? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so the question was kind of the broker partner side and what exactly are you looking at when you're talking about outsourcing too? And I would say that really it's a balance of it. So we're cost sensitive. That's kind of how we grew up, where we always looked at every dollar and we're kind of seeing what is the return of it. Now there's a point where you say, if there's somebody with better knowledge in a specific area, how can you utilize them? And then also kind of what's the fees to it too? There are people that do franchise consulting, for example, where you don't pay them, they get paid by the franchisor to bring people in, but they expose you to a lot of different things. We're not franchise consultants. I've met them and I've looked at different concepts as well. I've used them when I'm selling a franchisor as well, or franchise licenses too. So there are different people there. Then there's real estate brokers as well. And when I was talking about the development side, really talking about the real estate brokers, I don't pay my broker. He shows me different sites and I look at it. The landlord actually pays him to bring me in. And so really you're kind of balancing the costs, where in some cases you may outsource to basically help to save yourself some level of time, and you're going to pay for that and do a monetary cost for it. And then there are other ones where, you're not paying for anything, but you're getting an added benefit.
And that software that you mentioned with the demographics that kind of shows you the radius, all like real estate and commercial brokers have access to that because they benefit when you sign a lease. So you can tell them what you're looking for, or like, I want women that are this age and this demographic for my business, and they will find that. So that is a free resource because it's vendor.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys for for just taking your time, to sit and to talk with us today, because we asked a bunch of questions. You ready for all those questions?
It was fun. It was fun.
I mean, I'm glad you had the answers. So I know you guys have been great. If you guys need a copy of this recording because you came in halfway, you want to find some things, we mentioned that there will be a transcript that is going to go out to you, that is going to tell you everything along with the slide, kind of what we have going on. I hate to say it, but this is our last Entrepreneur Speaker Series of the fall. So as you can see on your screen, you can see behind me, we've had 5 of these, ranging from marketing to all about, the loans and credit types. We talked about, how you can turn your catering into a legitimately profitable business. We talked about that inner core, overcoming imposter syndrome. And then we're finishing out tonight with franchising 101, just getting to the basics. We will be back. We have not determined what our topics are going to be for next spring, but we need you to make sure you hold on to this, and it's on your screen. Linktree/speaker series. That is where we put everything. We've got a fancy website, we've got other things, but that Linktree just hangs on. So remember, it is Linktree, but there is a dot in the middle of the word tree, tr.ee. Be on point, be right there at that dot, Linktree/speaker series. That's where you need to be. Now, this is what I need for all of you who had franchising questions. I need you to go to the Linktree. I know you're thinking, why would I go to the link tree when you just told me that you don't have any more events posted on there, that there's nothing else coming right now, and you don't know what's gonna happen next year? 2 reasons. Number 1, if you follow us on that link tree, or you even follow the Eventbrite you used to sign up, as soon as we post new events, you're gonna be notified. That way, for these things that we have that actually do sell out and max out in capacity, you will be one of the first ones to hear about it. But number 2, and this one may even be more important, let's see if I can get the clicker to work. If not, I'll do my old fashioned clicking. Also on that link tree is this. I say it every time. So those of you, this is your first time, you're in for a treat. Dallas College not only sponsors the Entrepreneur Speaker Series and gives you all these resources, but they do more than that. This is just the start. That means if you want to know, how do I franchise my business? Do I buy a franchise? We've got help for you. So on your screen, you should see something about the DCVC, which stands for Dallas College Venture Club. You should see one-on-one advising. And guess what? It's absolutely complimentary to you. Dallas College is already taking care of it. So if you scan this QR code that's on your screen, take a screenshot, or better yet, I wonder where that screenshot would take you. Linktree/speaker series. If you visit it, there's an opportunity for you to sign up to get no cost one-on-one advising. That's right. Help you with growing your business. What's your strategy? What are your finances telling you about your business? And how much does it cost? Nothing. That is correct. It has been taken care of by Dallas College. So please, please, please pay attention to that link tree. There's a lot of things on there. Every time we do one of these things and the season is over, we post them so you can go back when you got some time in your car to put it on and just listen. This is all about helping you grow to where you want to be. I want to thank you for your time and attention this evening. I definitely want to thank our presenters of the evening. I think you can only see one of them right now, but they're both still here. They didn't run out on us just yet. But I want to tell them from the bottom of my heart how much I appreciate that. You guys weren't here in person, but obviously we had catering. And of course we had to get it catered by none other, you know what I'm saying, than some of their franchisees. So we want to thank you guys for that. We really appreciate your time. And I know there'll be some people who want to get in touch with you, and we'll find a way to make that happen. But I just want to say thank you again. All right, guys. All right, everybody online, you have a safe and great night. And we'll see you next time.